So I hope everything I've said makes sense, at least on paper, because now I will want to shows how I've used those rules on some of the images from my portfolio. Because even though at some point I was like starting to get aware that, hey, I need to keep introducing more and more rules. I mean, not more and more rules. It's just like all you have to do, or all I had to do is like introduce a couple of them, and it will make an image work. But even though I was aware that I really want to introduce the rules, I still kind of struggled to make them visible in an image. So just to show you, for example, let's grab this one. This is the Gribbly cave. When working on this image, I knew I wanted to show like this huge entrance, like this huge temple covered by in rocks. So I immediately went with like lower horizon line. And then I created the temple, and I wanted for it to feel huge. So in order for it to feel huge, I've done two things. I've made my character that's like super barely noticeable, and it's this small. And the other thing I've done is, whenever I was like in the past working on images where I wanted to show a huge structure, I would place my dude. And then a structure that in normal frame, for example, would look like that, or sorry, would look like that. I would grab my camera, like pull it to the ground and rotate it up or pan it up. So then, because I wanted to show the whole structure, it started like distorting into the perspective. And to me, it just ruins the feeling of scale. I mean, sometimes of course there are like shots when the character is like super close to the wall and he's like looking up and he's like being overwhelmed by like some tall structure, but it's also like feeling out of frame. That's totally allowed too. But if there was like only this structure, it just appears smaller in the frames. So what nowadays what I will try and do is, if there is a character and there is a building, I will just like cut the top part of the building, and then maybe I will do like another shot, like an establishing shot just of the structure, like maybe like some slightly aerial shot that will show this building maybe like from a distance or whatever, right? So what I'm saying is I really didn't want to show the top part of the structure, because I want to indicate just by cutting it off that, hey, it might be taller and taller and taller and bigger. Now the other thing that I've done is basically implement the rule of repetition. I wanted to introduce those poles, and the way they're placed, they're pushing the depth in an image. So I have one pole in here, then there's another one in here, and then grouping of shapes, there's a bunch of them in here, and then there's another one in here, like two of them, and groups of them, and this one is like separated slightly, right? And some of them, and I was like really trying to be aware of the distance between objects. It feels like different, and obviously not the more elements you will have on your scene, it will get like harder and harder and harder. But like just, you know, like doing it here and there, it really helps. So in case of this one, I've introduced like 2 and some leading lines, right? Like 2 or 3 rules that I try to stick with. So other image. Come on. This one. In this one, I really wanted to show this tall and huge structure. God damn it, I still haven't gotten to like big, medium, small, but I will get to it like soon, pretty soon. So I wanted to create like this huge station, and this huge station is like filling the frame, and then like the horizon line is like, I would say, somewhere over there, because there's a bunch of stairs going up, so it's somewhere over there actually, right? And it's like this huge shape, and there's like a lot of corners to it, and then there's like a bunch of smaller shapes in here, the small windows, the small stairs, and there's like a leading line, and there's like a bunch of other leading lines leading us to the image, and then there are the cables, like they're going over there as well, right? Now in order not to in order to push the reads or the clarity or like visibility of single objects when I was like placing them, I wasn't placing them randomly. I mean, it's so cool to me when we get to see a shape and you trace it into the distance by repetition. It pushes the depth. But I didn't want, what I didn't want to do is create this shape and then a bunch of other shapes and there's like noise everywhere. What I wanted to do is group the shapes together so we get to see the shape in here. There's the lamp, there's the bench, there's like this screen, there's the luggage, right? So it's grouped together. And then we get to see this shape. And again, lamps, luggage, I'm sorry, bench, trash bin, and then again. Right? And in between there's like some other small shapes and they're repeating and there's trash grouped around those shapes. So there's a lot of areas still in between that's calm. The way I look at it is chaos, contrast, calmness. Sorry. Calmness. Contrasty stuff, a lot of stuff. Calm, contrast, calm. So that's how we often try and approach repetition. Now, let's talk about let's talk about this one. So with this one, I've struggled a bit because I wanted to show like some huge structures in the background and I wanted for the structures to fill the frame. So at first I was just like trying to fake the scale of the objects, as in the temples in the distance, they were like 2 times bigger. But it like messed the depth because, for example, a good indicator of, or great indicator of scale is are like windows. So if those windows were like this big, and the temple was like 2 times bigger, then the windows were like this big as well. So it was like ruining the depth. So in order to fill the frame, to do in like my mind, to make the image like more interesting, is I've started with a lower horizon line because I really didn't figure out how to do horizon lines properly there. Then because I wanted to show the still bit of the story, right? So the only thing I had to do is add some verticality to the image, meaning there's a street and it's going up, and there's a bunch of buildings and they're going up. So what I should also have like emphasized a bit more, or like just at least mention, is that it's always worth adding some verticality to your images as well, from like a couple of reasons. Like one of them will be, well, composition, like to make the composition a bit more juicy. But the other one is often we are working, artists are working with level designers, and like verticality in games is just a thing. In case of this shot, I wanted to create leading lines that will be visible, but they hopefully won't be too distracting. So we have this shot that points us towards the character, and we have this line in here. So to be able to recognize this leading line, what I tried and avoid doing is creating super gribbly water with like strong waves, and I tried to not to like over tweak the shader in a way where we would be able to see through the water to pop up all the gribble, or I really wanted to avoid like creating too much like specularity. I wanted to keep this surface just calm, and then the shore, and it's like different in terms of like color and value and saturation, and then there's grass on top, right? So that was like the first choices that I've tried to introduce, and then the other ones were the grouping of shapes and value grouping. So at first I scattered the ruins like quite randomly, but then I decided to place the ruins with the trees together, and then there's like this fall off, and then in here there's a bunch of shapes in here, and then a bunch of shapes in here, and then there's like a bunch of shapes in there, and the shapes in here. So I've grouped the objects, and then I've rotated the sun around to unify somewhat the values of the objects within the groups, right? This pops out, but that's totally fine because the stuff between this is like darker in value, so it doesn't blend in. Because if it were like blending in with everything, then yeah, I would have to like start figuring out what we are looking at. So we would create confusion. So it wouldn't look as good, I think. Now, with all of the grouping thingy things, what I didn't have to do is I didn't have to make the values in the distance, the background, like super light in value. Because what I will always prefer to do is to make the background pop out. I don't know if it makes sense, but the thing with area perspective, and it's like a creative personal choice, stuff can get lighter, of course, or stuff can be like foggy. That's cool too. But if it's like a sunny day, and I will talk about area perspective and lighting in the next portion of the videos, I think what I really want to do is I really want for my background to pop out, and I really want, like, when the sun is warm, I want for my shadows to feel colder, or just to feel cold. So if the sun is like yellowy, then my shadows should either be like desaturated grays or like slightly blues. And the thing with blues with this tone is it's always like this type of blue. I don't know if it makes sense, but this type of blue or like darker blue, obviously it will be darker in value, right? So I don't want to go with lighter blue. I really like this darker tone because to me it adds more depth into the image. It adds like more contrast. So because I'm like, as I said in the previous videos, I'm in the same video, I think, because I'm like I'm doing a bunch of takes. So I try to avoid doing my character super dark, right? If I were to make him dark and stuff would like be lighter and lighter and lighter in the value, I would limit myself from creating like this creative choice of having stuff pop out, right? So when we look at the values, again, I feel like it's quite clear what we are looking at. All right, so I think that's enough of showcasing my personal works. Now let's jump